#1 pound for pound in the world.
Lomachenko has made really good fighters quit.
He wants to be undisputed.
Life change your plan.
He says, I am going back home, period.
Masterful stuff.
To be there in his country's moment of need, this was as real as it gets.
Stop this war that Russia has started.
A lot of other athletes in his position would have found a way to go fight for the unified title.
Loma is back!
It was a dream of his life, but life before.
He made a very conscious decision that this is more important than that.
On that moment, you're thinking only about your future life. That's it.
Lomachenko!
It's easy becoming an undisputed champion if you defeat someone who is already the undisputed champion. But otherwise, the process of consolidating all those belts is difficult.
Everybody came to the solution where Kambosos is going to be fighting Loma next.
Loma, he's still a bad man at 135 pounds.
I was thinking it will be next step for me. But life change your plan.
I'm Vladimir Klitschko, and I'm addressing the entire world to stop this war that Russia has started.
Day 4 of the war in Europe, and Russia maintains its assault on Ukraine.
The Russians set fire to school facilities.
The city was devastated, and in mass graves, hundreds of bodies were found.
February 24 was started a war, our country, and on this moment I can't leave my country. I can't leave to take my dream, my goal, because I have more responsibility for my family, for my country.
He says, I'm going to Romania. If my flight are canceled to Odessa, I'm going to Romania, and then I'm going to cross the border through the river. And I said, why don't we do it differently? Why don't you go to Romania? We're going to bring your family to Romania, and then we'll fly you here to the United States. And he goes like, do you hear yourself what you're talking? You're out of your mind. I'm not going to do that. He says, I am going back home, period.
It's just the call of duty, I would say it this way. And I believe that all the Ukrainians, men and women, feel this call of duty.
You know, what Vasily Lomachenko did, almost immediately after the Russian invasion, getting back to Ukraine, flying up to Bucharest, Romania, then getting across the border to be there in his country's moment of need. We talk a lot about how we shouldn't use the terms heroes or heroic in sports because it's just games. Well, this wasn't just games. This was as real as it gets, as dangerous as it gets. And when the moment presented itself, where you could either stay abroad or go back and defend your country against this kind of aggression, he did the hard thing. He went back. And in terms of his career, I think to him all of that's secondary.
When it's gonna happen, it's cancel all plans, all people from our country. It's canceled.
And I called promoter and they said he's not coming out. We have to pass it opportunity. And I called Vasily. I said, now look, you were dreaming for this fight. You're a belt. This is a belt belongs to you. He says, it's meant to be. I'm staying here.
We see the impact from this war. This live from Russian propaganda is a special operation against military forces in our hometown. Destroyed more than 220 apartments building.
It was a dream of his life, but life before. Now, he have another dream. So I know him personally more than 10 years, 15 years. So, and now I can understand he changed.
On that moment, you're thinking only about your future life. That's it.
The United Nations says it has confirmed the deaths of more than 5,500 civilians during Russia's invasion of Ukraine.
Fight wasn't happening. I called top rank, and top rank says, well, we respect, we support, we will do anything in our power to help him and to support him. And then he's ready, we'll bring him back, and we'll put him back in the ring.
You know, the sacrifice he made professionally to do something much more important. To return to Ukraine and to continue to fight. Look, there could have been a justification in his mind, in the minds of Ukrainian people, to go fight for the unified title. A lot of other athletes in his position would have found a way to justify that. And he didn't. He made a very conscious decision that this is more important than that.
We are fighting for our people. We are fighting for our families. We are fighting for our children. We are fighting for our future.
Look, you know, it's like you're born in this country. You grew up with your country. Our country give you a chance, be athletes from this side.
It's an incredibly strong signal because it says, you know, even the celebrities of the country, right? Even the people, you know, the people who we think of as people who have options, right? Like there's rules in Ukraine. You can get out of the country if you're an elite athlete. For people in that position to say, no, I'm going to put this aside, I'm going to fight for my country, it's a really powerful signal that we're all in it together.
Of course, it's very important for me. It's very important for all our athletes. You have to represent your country. And of course, it's always an honor for me.
Today is the day of Ukrainian independence. Today we should celebrate, but instead we have to fight. Because 6 months ago, an imperialistic power decided to attack us, to take away our freedom and our lives, to deny our right to exist. Today I want to pay tribute to the heroes who gave their lives. Their immense sacrifice reminds us that freedom is not free.
He's not the only one making the statement, right?
Остановите эту войну.
Klitschko brothers, other Ukrainian athletes, tennis players. This is the biggest armed conflict in Europe since the end of World War II, since VE Day, May 8th, 1945. But when he went back on February 27th, 28th, a few days after the invasion, most of the world assumed Russia was going to roll over Ukraine, roll into Kyiv, roll over the whole country.
No more important than the clear prohibition against countries taking the territory of their neighbor by force.
And throughout Russian history, right, you've had periods of times where the Russian Empire encompassed Ukraine. So Ukraine's independence has come about in the early 20th century, and then again in the latter part of the 20th century, where it's emerged as an independent nation. So the two have a very entwined history going back in time. However, the claim that President Putin of Russia is making that Ukraine is not a distinct nation is a ridiculous claim to make.
On the first day, you can't believe that, and you can't take this very serious. But when it's going to second, third day, reality comes to your head, and you understand it's a real war, and it's a big trouble for people.
It's extremely important to show Russia it is not okay in 2022, after Second World War, break the international law and invade other country.
The sense of nationalism, I mean, hugely affects the present war, because whereas you see that the Russians have run out of soldiers and have to resort to conscription, this Ukrainian civic identity gives Ukraine essentially limitless numbers of people who are willing to fight to defend their nation.
5 months after Russia's unprovoked invasion, Ukraine's military is still fighting and Kyiv is still standing.
This is a feature of war that you see over and over again, in the sense that it's always easier to defend your own territory than it is to hold territory in other countries.
Because I have more responsibility for my family, for my country, for people who live around me. I stay in Ukraine, I'm going to military place, take some military dress and guns, and stay defense our country.
Experts say they are stunned by Ukraine's surprise gains and Russia's rapid retreat.
I was in touch with him, I was in touch with his father. We always were on the phone talking, and but every time I heard, I saw something on the news, I called him right away.
Children are dying by the dozens now, at home, in their houses, or on the roads to exile. Look at these images. They're the concrete and real result of Putin's special operation, so to speak.
It's very, very big problem for our kids, because they are small, they don't understand what happened, but they are see this bomb.
А папу оставили в Киеве.
It's not good feeling then you sit in a basement couple hours and you don't understand what you when you can go up, when you can come back to your house. How can I take words and explain feeling this feeling? Don't understand it if you not live in this situation. A lot of people die, a lot of kids die.
They are very deliberately destroying our schools, so more than 2,000 schools around the country are damaged.
It's not right word what explain this horror.
Russians are old enemies. So, if you really want to be free, we must finish this war now. Because now we have a chance to do it.
So at this point in time, when you talk about bad blood between Russia and Ukraine, you talk about countries that have been involved in essentially armed conflict with each other or with each other's proxies for the last 8 years.
And with Ukraine!
There's nothing that Russia could have done to make the Ukrainians hate Russians more than what this war has been.
The more that the Ukrainians can at least give a black eye to the Russians, the more incentive it gives to those countries to support them as in any venture.
One of the great errors the Russians made in what was going to be a special military operation and not a war was assuming that Russian language speakers would rise up and support the Russian invaders. That turned out to be very, very far from the truth.
It seems to be just a complete failure of logistics, strategy, tactics on the Russian side. Everything is just falling apart.
What we have seen, though, is that the Ukrainians executed this brilliant counteroffensive in the last month, but also it really exposed the shortcomings in the Russian military. Tons of ammunition, weapons were just abandoned, troops just fled. It was a disaster for Russia.
Russian troops retreated last week in the face of Ukrainian counteroffensive.
One of the fascinating things that's happened has been this kind of overwhelming development of this Ukrainian civic identity that transcends language.
In terms of what Vasily Lomachenko is doing, it takes tremendous courage to do what he's done. If he hadn't gone back, right? People would have said, well, he's a professional fighter, he's got stuff going on, he's out of the country right now. What can one man do that's going to make a difference in this situation? But when you're Vasily Lomachenko, you're not one person.
These men, the greatest champions of their era, are risking everything. The eyes of the world, of history, are on Kiev and Vitaly Klitschko. Vasily Lomachenko He knows what the moment requires. Greatness. If this were a punching war, Russia wouldn't stand a chance.
You are already a kind of hero to your people. If you don't go back, they're not going to forget that. And he went back.
Look at the history of the recent history of boxing in Ukraine. 15 Olympic medalists since '96, 8 professional champions. I think that speaks to, in a certain way, something about it, reveals something about the national character.
Most of the boxers, most of the athletes, they support it a lot. They really did support it.
I think if you're from that country, living there, defend her. Love your woman and fight for your country. That's what I say.
Even Kambosos was, you know, good luck. Make sure you're not gonna be hurt. Make sure we're gonna see you back in the division. You know, back in the fighting. We want you to see in the ring.
Lomachenko decided not to leave now, and you know, I respect it. Like I put out that tweet. Stay safe, stay healthy. Do what you have to do right now.
They understand what it is. They understand it's where you're not going into the ring. You are at the war zone. You know, tomorrow that missile would land at a mile away. Tomorrow it can land at right hand. The Ukrainian forces start pushing Russians out of the country. That was, and Vasily said, "Okay, this is my time to go too."
This was the scene at LAX earlier this week as Vasily Lomachenko has made it with his family back stateside to set up camp and get ready to return.
Когда ситуация стала меняться в Украине, я понимал, что я в принципе здесь уже ничем не помогу, что я тут в принципе не нужен, потому как у нас дела пошли уже намного лучше.
So this is a moment where you work harder, you recommit to the sport, you redouble your efforts, if that's even possible with a guy like Lomachenko who works so hard, and you just start again. I think Vasily Lomachenko getting back into the ring, one of the most popular athletes in the country, one of the most famous people in the country, someone who represents courage and resilience, especially after coming back in the early days after the invasion. I think his fights mean something. I think they mean more now than they did before, obviously, because of where Ukraine is and where the Ukrainian people are. Is the course of the war changed by Vasily Lomachenko winning this fight or losing this fight? No. But is it a moment? Is it something that, for however long it lasts, whatever he represents, can it make a small difference in the lives of the Ukrainian people because they care about him? Yeah, I think that's fair.
What does it mean to you to be able to represent Ukraine in a fight while this war is happening?
If you ask any athletes from any place around the world, he give you the same answer, the same what I can tell, can say. It's an honor for me.
Loma is a type of a fighter where he's not gonna fight just to fight anybody. Every fight, every fighter, it has to mean something.
And by fighting now, for a certain segment of the population around the world, he's going to be able to communicate the story of Ukraine to them now, when he fights.
And once you get back into this is what life is, you want to have moments of entertainment. So I think by going back into the ring and boxing, he's giving the country something.
People have a tendency to forget, to move on. Ukrainian athletes like Vasily Lomachenko, by boxing, can keep the focus on Ukraine.
Devin, the Dream, Haney!
Kambosos already fighting with Haney, the possibility to go back to fight for the unified titles.
Man, we take it on all comers. No matter who it is, we want to fight the best fighters in the world. I believe I'm the best fighter in the world. Whoever it is next, bring them on.
Loma should be next and probably will be next. We don't know how much longer Haney's going to be. I think Loma is the right guy.
Do you see yourself taking on Vasily Lomachenko next if he can get past Jamaine Ortiz, or are you done with this weight class?
Yes, that's definitely a fight that I entertain.
Who is the best prospect in my division?
Ortiz is the type of fighter, once he gets you on the ropes, he is gonna let his hands go.
We couldn't find a better prospect than Ortiz.
It's been all Jamaine Ortiz.
He's a 16-0, undefeated. He's a young, he's hungry, he's dangerous. That's what Team Loma wants.
Jamaine, the technician!
Hopefully I get higher profile fights after this fight. If there's a good fight, a big fight for a world championship, a big name, at 135, I'll stick around.
Now I have a big motivation, bigger than before this fight with Teofimo. I believe if God give me this chance one more time, I will take it.
If he goes out and he has a big fight and he succeeds, this can be something that, you know, gives people pride about being Ukrainian, and it gives people pride in terms of Ukrainian national identity, and it is something that collectively people can rally around together.
I'm from Ukraine. I'm born in Ukraine. This country give me a chance to be Olympic champion. Now I have a chance to be a world champion.
And remember where we were a year ago. This fight was supposed to go to Vasily Lomachenko. Then this war broke out in Ukraine, and that stopped what was supposed to happen. And Devin Haney stepped in. I'd like to see Loma get his shot.
He likes a risk. He likes a challenge. That's what makes Loma to be Loma.
Next step, it's October 29. If I will win this fight, maybe we can sign a contract with Haney. I believe I will win this fight.
We don't know what his place in the history of the sport is going to be. There's a lot left. He's done some great things as an amateur, one of the great amateurs ever. He's done some great things as a pro, and he probably will continue to do so.
My name is Lomachenko.
When people think about Vasily Lomachenko, I think probably the first thing they're going to think about, in addition to his being a champion, is the way that he came to the defense of his country.